I caught my fiancé cheating with my childhood friend. Then I discovered my own mother set them up. My revenge? Living my best life without them. I, 32 female, recently broke off my engagement with my fiancé Chris, 28 male, after discovering he had been cheating on me with my childhood friend Penelope, 31 female. The whole situation is a mess, and I'm still trying to process everything that happened. To understand the complexity of this situation, I need to go back to the beginning. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other. My parents, especially my mother, were well-respected members of the community. My father was the local dentist, and my mother was a teacher at the elementary school. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family, but things weren't always as they seemed. I was an only child, and my parents, particularly my mother, had high expectations for me. I was expected to excel in school, participate in extracurricular activities, and always present a perfect image to the community. It was a lot of pressure for a young girl, but I did my best to meet their expectations. Penelope moved in next door when we were both 7 years old. Her family was new to town, and her mother quickly became best friends with mine. Penelope and I naturally gravitated towards each other, being the same age and living so close. We became inseparable, spending almost every day together after school and on weekends. As we grew older, I started to notice that my mother seemed to favor Penelope over me. She would praise Penelope's achievements, no matter how small, while my own accomplishments were often overlooked or criticized for not being good enough. At first, I thought I was just being oversensitive, but as the years went by, the pattern became undeniable. Despite this, Penelope and I remained close throughout elementary and middle school. We shared secrets, dreams, and fears. We had sleepovers, went to summer camps together, and even talked about going to the same college. However, things started to change when we entered high school. In our freshman year, I developed my first serious crush on a boy named Hector, 33 male. He was a junior, tall, athletic, and incredibly charming. I spent months gathering the courage to talk to him, and when I finally did, we hit it off. We started talking more frequently, and I was thrilled when he asked me to be his lab partner in chemistry class. I confided in Penelope about my feelings for Hector, and she seemed supportive at first. She would ask me for updates on our interactions and even helped me pick out outfits when I knew I'd see him. Looking back, I should have noticed how her smile never quite reached her eyes when we talked about Hector. As prom approached in our senior year, I finally worked up the courage to ask Hector to be my date. To my surprise and delight, he said yes. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to tell Penelope. When I did, she seemed happy for me, but there was something off about her reaction. She was a bit too quiet, a bit too reserved in her congratulations. A week later, my world came crashing down. I overheard some girls talking in the bathroom about how Hector and Penelope were going to prom together. I couldn't believe it, so I confronted Hector directly. He confirmed it, saying Penelope had asked him shortly after I did, and he thought we could all go as friends. I was devastated. When I confronted Penelope, she brushed it off, claiming Hector had approached her and she couldn't say no. I knew she was lying, but I was too hurt to argue. Our friendship was never the same after that, and we drifted apart after graduation. After high school, I left our small town for college in the city. I studied marketing and threw myself into my studies, determined to build a life for myself away from the shadow of my mother's expectations and Penelope's betrayal. I made new friends, had a few relationships, and gradually began to heal from the hurts of my past. After graduation, I landed a job at a small marketing firm. I worked hard, putting in long hours and weekends to prove myself. My dedication paid off, and within a few years, I had moved up to a position at a large, prestigious firm. I was finally feeling confident and successful. It was at this point in my life, when everything seemed to be going well, that I met Chris. We were introduced by mutual friends at a barbecue. Chris was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in me. He was 4 years younger, which made me hesitant at first, but he assured me it wasn't an issue. Chris was a high school English teacher, passionate about literature and inspiring young minds. I admired his dedication to his students and his ability to find joy in the small things in life. We started dating, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. As our relationship progressed, I noticed that there was a significant income disparity between us. My job as a marketing executive paid well, while Chris's teacher's salary was modest. But I didn't mind. I was happy to cover most of our expenses, including rent, bills, and vacations. Chris would occasionally treat me to dinner or small gifts, which I appreciated. After 3 years together, Chris proposed. It was a simple, intimate proposal at our favorite park, and I said yes without hesitation. I thought I had finally found my happily ever after. But life had other plans. 2 weeks ago, I came home early from a business trip to surprise Chris. As I entered our apartment, I heard voices coming from the bedroom. Thinking Chris might be on a phone call, I quietly made my way there. What I saw when I opened the door shattered my world. Chris was in bed with Penelope. My Chris and my childhood friend Penelope. I stood there, frozen in shock, as they scrambled to cover themselves. Chris immediately jumped up and started apologizing, while Penelope just sat there with a smug look on her face. I told them both to get out and never contact me again. As they were leaving, Penelope had the audacity to say, "I always get what I want, don't I?" It was then that I realized this wasn't just about Chris. She had done this to hurt me, just like she did in high school with Hector. After they left, I broke down. I called my best friend Amelia, 32 female, who I had met in college. She came over immediately, helping me pack up Chris's things and change the locks. Amelia has been my rock through all of this, checking in on me daily and making sure I'm eating and sleeping. The next day, I received a barrage of texts and calls from Chris, begging for forgiveness. I blocked his number without responding. What surprised me was that I also received a call from my mother. She started by asking how I was doing, which was unusual for her. Then she dropped the bomb. She knew about Chris and Penelope's affair. Apparently, she had been the one to introduce them, thinking Penelope would be a better match for Chris. She said she thought she was doing what was best for everyone. I was furious. Not only had my mother betrayed me, but she had actively participated in destroying my relationship. I told her I never wanted to speak to her again and hung up. It's been 2 weeks since then, and I'm still trying to come to terms with everything. I've thrown myself into work, trying to keep busy. Amelia has been a great support, but I still feel lost and betrayed. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know one thing for certain: I deserve better than Chris, Penelope, and my mother. I'm focusing on healing and moving forward, one day at a time. But it's hard. There are moments when I miss Chris, when I want to call my mother for comfort, when I wish I could turn back time to when Penelope and I were still best friends. But then I remember the look on Penelope's face when I caught them, the callousness in my mother's voice when she admitted to introducing them, and Chris's weak apologies. And I know I'm better off without them. Am I wrong for cutting all of them out of my life? Should I give my mother a chance to explain herself? How do I move on from this betrayal? I feel lost and could use some advice. Update 1. It's been a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Your words have been a source of strength during this difficult time. First, let me address the most common suggestion in the comments. No, I haven't considered therapy. I know many of you think it might help, but right now, I'm not comfortable with the idea of opening up to a stranger about my problems. Maybe in the future, but not now. For now, I'm coping by throwing myself into work and spending time with friends. Now, onto the updates. About 2 weeks after my last post, I received an unexpected visit from Penelope. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was just settling in for a quiet day of reading when my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was shocked to see Penelope standing there, looking disheveled and upset. Against my better judgment, I let her in. As soon as she entered, Penelope broke down. Through her tears, she told me that Chris had left her. Apparently, he claimed that he had made a mistake and wanted to try and win me back. Penelope said she felt used and betrayed, and that she realized how much she had hurt me. As I listened to her sob story, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to fall back into our old patterns of friendship. But a larger part of me felt no sympathy at all. This was the consequence of her actions, after all. When she finally calmed down, I asked her the question that had been burning in my mind since that fateful day: why? Why did she always seem to target the men in my life? Her answer shocked me. Penelope confessed that she had always been jealous of me. Despite my mother's favoritism towards her, Penelope said she had always felt second best. She admitted to going after Hector in high school and Chris now because she wanted to prove to herself that she could win against me. She went on to explain that growing up, she always felt like she was living in my shadow. While my parents, especially my mother, seemed to prefer her, she said that in the wider community, I was the one people admired. I was the one who got better grades, who was more popular at school, who seemed to have it all together. Penelope said that she had always struggled with feelings of inadequacy, and that going after the boys I liked was her way of proving to herself that she could be better than me in some way. She said she knew it was wrong, but she couldn't help herself. I was stunned. All these years, I had thought Penelope was the golden child, the one everyone preferred. To hear that she had been harboring these feelings of inadequacy was surprising, to say the least. It made me realize how little I really knew about her inner thoughts and feelings, despite our years of friendship. However, her confession didn't change anything for me. I told her that while I appreciated her honesty, it didn't excuse her actions. The pain and betrayal she had caused were real, regardless of her motivations. I asked her to leave and not contact me again. As for Chris, true to Penelope's word, he started showing up at my workplace with flowers and apology notes. The first time it happened, I was caught off guard. I was leaving the office for lunch when I saw him standing by the entrance, a bouquet of my favorite lilies in his hand. I ignored him and walked past, but he followed me, pleading for a chance to explain. I quickened my pace, ducking into a nearby cafe to lose him. After that, he started showing up more frequently, sometimes in the morning, sometimes at lunch, always with flowers or small gifts. His persistence was starting to affect my work. I was constantly on edge, wondering when he might appear next. My colleagues noticed my distraction, and rumors started to circulate. Eventually, my boss, Karen, 45F, called me into her office to ask if everything was okay. I had to explain the situation, which was embarrassing but necessary. To my relief, Karen was understanding and supportive. She offered to have security escort Chris out if he showed up again, and told me to take a few days off if I needed to clear my head. I was grateful for her support and felt relieved that I wouldn't have to deal with Chris's appearances anymore. The most difficult part of this month has been dealing with my mother. She's been relentless in her attempts to contact me. She's left voicemails, sent emails, and even tried to reach out through mutual family friends. Each time I see her name pop up on my phone or in my inbox, I feel a mix of anger and sadness. In her messages, she claims that she only wanted what was best for me and that she thought Chris and Penelope would be happier together. She says she regrets her actions and wants to make amends. In one particularly emotional voicemail, she broke down crying, saying she missed me and that she never meant to hurt me. I haven't responded to any of her attempts at communication. Part of me wants to hear her out, to understand why she would betray her own daughter like this. But a larger part of me is afraid that if I let her explain, I might forgive her, and I'm not ready for that. The hurt is still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. Amelia has been my rock through all of this. She's helped me block numbers, delete emails, and even accompanied me to a lawyer to discuss the possibility of a restraining order against Chris if his workplace visits continue. She's also been there to listen when I need to vent, to distract me when I'm feeling low, and to remind me of my worth when I start to doubt myself. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've thrown myself into a new project, working longer hours than usual. We're launching a major campaign for a new client, and the challenge has been a good way to keep my mind occupied. My team has been supportive, picking up the slack when I have off days, and I'm grateful for the sense of normalcy my job provides. As for my personal life, I'm not ready to start dating again. The betrayal is still too fresh, and I need time to heal. I've started reconnecting with old friends from college, making an effort to socialize more. Last weekend, I went to a wine tasting event with some girlfriends, and it was nice to laugh and have fun without thinking about Chris or Penelope. I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are harder than others, but I'm slowly starting to feel like myself again. I'm learning to trust my instincts more and to value myself enough to walk away from toxic relationships, even if they're with family. Thank you all again for your support. Your kind words and advice have been a source of strength during this difficult time. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Update 2. It's been another month, and I have some surprising updates to share. First, the situation with Chris took an unexpected turn. Remember how I mentioned he kept showing up at my workplace? Well, it turns out he wasn't just doing that to me. A colleague of mine, Betty, 29F, approached me privately last week. We were grabbing coffee in the break room when she asked if she could talk to me about something personal. Betty and I have always been friendly, but not particularly close, so I was curious about what she wanted to discuss. Betty told me that Chris had been messaging her on social media, trying to ask her out. She knew about our history and wanted to let me know. She showed me the messages on her phone, and I felt a mix of shock, anger, and oddly, relief. The messages started innocently enough, with Chris commenting on Betty's photos and posts. But they quickly escalated to flirty comments and eventually, an invitation to dinner. Betty had politely declined, citing her knowledge of our relationship, but Chris had persisted, saying that he and I were over and he was moving on. I was shocked. Not only was Chris still trying to win me back, or so I thought, but he was also pursuing other women at the same time. Betty showed me the messages, and they were disturbingly similar to how Chris used to text me when we first started dating. The same compliments, the same jokes, even some of the same phrases. It was like looking at a script. After thanking Betty for her honesty, I decided to do some digging. I reached out to a few mutual friends and discovered that Chris had been doing this with several women. It seemed he had a pattern of pursuing multiple women simultaneously, playing the field until someone took the bait. One friend, Mark, 33M, told me that Chris had even hit on his girlfriend at a party last year, when he and I were still together. Mark hadn't said anything at the time because he thought it was just drunk flirting, but now he realized it was part of a pattern. This revelation made me realize how lucky I was to have found out about his true nature before we got married. It also made me wonder if Penelope knew about this side of Chris. Had she really won anything, or was she just another pawn in Chris's game? Speaking of Penelope, she tried to contact me again. This time, she sent a long email detailing her side of the story. She claimed that Chris had manipulated her, feeding her lies about our relationship to gain her sympathy. According to Penelope, Chris had told her that I was controlling and emotionally abusive, and that he felt trapped in our relationship. While I'm sure there's some truth to Chris being manipulative, I also know Penelope well enough to know she's not entirely innocent. After all, she had a history of going after men I was interested in. But her email did make me reflect on my relationship with Chris. Had there been signs of his manipulative nature that I had overlooked? In her email, Penelope also mentioned something that caught my attention. She said that my mother had been in regular contact with her, even after everything that happened. This bothered me more than I expected. After all this time, was my mother still choosing Penelope over me? I decided it was time to confront my mother. I called her, steeling myself for the conversation. When she answered, she sounded surprised but relieved to hear from me. We made small talk for a few minutes, both of us dancing around the real reason for my call. Finally, I took a deep breath and asked her point-blank about her continued relationship with Penelope. My mother didn't deny it. Instead, she tried to justify it, saying that Penelope was like a daughter to her and she couldn't just cut her off. This led to a heated argument. I told her how hurt I was by her actions, how she had consistently chosen Penelope over me throughout our lives. I brought up instances from my childhood and teenage years, times when I had needed her support but she had been too busy praising Penelope. My mother, to my surprise, broke down. She confessed that she had always favored Penelope because Penelope reminded her of herself when she was younger. She admitted to projecting her own desires and unfulfilled dreams onto Penelope, while pushing me aside in the process. She explained that when she was young, she had dreams of becoming a writer. But life, marriage, and motherhood had gotten in the way, and she had never pursued that dream. Penelope, with her outgoing personality and creative spirit, represented the person my mother wished she had been. While this explanation helped me understand her behavior, it didn't excuse it. I told her that while I appreciated her honesty, I needed time and space to process everything. I also made it clear that if she wanted any chance at rebuilding our relationship, she needed to stop contact with Penelope. My mother agreed, albeit reluctantly. Only time will tell if she actually follows through. As for me, I'm doing better. I've started taking a kickboxing class as a way to release stress and build confidence. It's been incredibly therapeutic, and I've made some new friends in the process. There's something empowering about punching a bag and feeling my body grow stronger. Work continues to go well. I've been offered a promotion, which I'm seriously considering. The new role would involve more travel, which I think might be good for me right now. A change of scenery and new challenges could be just what I need to fully move on from this situation. I'm still not ready to date, but I'm no longer opposed to the idea. I'm focusing on rebuilding my self-esteem and learning to trust again, one day at a time. I've also been reconnecting with old hobbies that I had neglected during my relationship with Chris. I've started painting again, something I used to love in college but had given up due to lack of time. Thank you all for your continued support. Your advice and kind words have been a source of strength during this difficult time. I'll update again if there are any significant developments. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I'm happy to report that things have significantly improved in my life. First, the promotion I mentioned in my last update. I took it. The increased responsibilities and travel have been challenging but rewarding. I've had the opportunity to visit several countries for work, including Japan, Brazil, and Germany. Each trip has been a learning experience, not just professionally but personally as well. Immersing myself in different cultures has given me a new perspective on life and helped me realize that my problems, while significant to me, are just a small part of the bigger picture. As for the personal front, there have been some interesting developments. Chris finally stopped trying to contact me after I threatened legal action. I heard through the grapevine that he moved to another state for a new teaching position. Good riddance. I hope he's learned from this experience and treats his future partners with more respect. Penelope, surprisingly, has kept her distance. The last I heard, she was dating someone new and seemed to be staying out of my life. I hope it stays that way. While I don't wish her ill, I also don't want her in my life anymore. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The situation with my mother has been more complex. After our conversation 6 months ago, she did as promised and cut off contact with Penelope. We've been slowly rebuilding our relationship, starting with short phone calls and eventually progressing to monthly dinners. It hasn't been easy. There have been arguments and tears, but also moments of understanding and reconciliation. My mother has been seeing a therapist to work on her issues, which I appreciate. She's been making an effort to show interest in my life and career, asking about my work trips and new responsibilities. While our relationship will never be what it once was, I'm cautiously optimistic about its future. On a personal note, I've started dating again. I met a guy named Alex, 34M, at my kickboxing class. We've been seeing each other for about 2 months now. It's still early days, but he's kind, respectful, and understands my need to take things slow given my past experiences. He works as an architect and shares my love for travel and trying new cuisines. My friendship with Amelia has only grown stronger through all of this. She's been there for me through every up and down, and I can't imagine having gone through this without her support. We've started a tradition of monthly girls' nights with a few other close friends, which has been a great way to unwind and stay connected. Looking back at the past year, I'm amazed at how much has changed. The betrayal I experienced was painful, but it also taught me valuable lessons about self-worth and the importance of surrounding myself with genuine people. I'm stronger now, more confident in my decisions, and less willing to tolerate disrespect or manipulation from anyone, regardless of their relation to me. I've learned to trust my instincts and to prioritize my own happiness and well-being. My passion for painting has reignited, and I've even sold a few pieces at a local art fair. It's not about the money, but the feeling of creating something beautiful and having others appreciate it has been incredibly fulfilling. As I write this, I'm preparing for another business trip, this time to Australia. A year ago, I never would have imagined my life taking this turn. While the journey hasn't been easy, I'm grateful for where it has led me. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and kind words have been invaluable. While I hope to never have to post about such a situation again, I'm grateful for the community I found here during my darkest times. Life is unpredictable, and while it can bring unexpected pain, it can also bring unexpected joy. I'm looking forward to whatever comes next, knowing that I have the strength to handle both the good and the bad.